Hello, I've been away for a little bit and going to catch you up on what I've been doing as of late and talking about a program which I'm now in, which some of you may find of interest if you have health considerations that you want to rearrange, if I can put it that way. I'm doing something which is called LifestyleRx, which is a lifestyle remodification program, if I can call it that, which is currently in Canada being offered through in the provinces of BC, Alberta, and Ontario. And I think Manitoba might be offering it soon as well. So what LifestyleRx is a lifestyle modification program related around food, exercise, and sleep primarily, which is a 12-week program with a 4-week prelude, if you will. And to be honest, I'm quite impressed by it. The reason I say is, like, we always say, oh, we should do preventative health, or why doesn't the system do something about preventative health? This actually is doing it in a way which I've never seen a government program do before. Now, when I'd heard about it, I actually think I'd first seen a reference to it actually on Instagram, believe it or not, but don't hold that against it. I checked it out and I spoke to my GP about it. And it's a legitimate program, which in BC, Alberta, and Ontario, I know is fully funded by the government with the doctor's referral, which you can get for a whole variety of scenarios. Could be high blood pressure, in my case, PCOS, diabetes is a very big one, or pre-diabetes, metabolic syndrome, dysregulation, if you will, is another big one. And your doctor does a referral, you sign up. And I was quite impressed by it when I started it, because when I first heard, oh, well, the government's handling it, my first thought was, oh, it's gonna suck. Okay, we've all dealt with government enough to know that the promises are big, the delivery is poor. The same amount announcements get made over and over again. Everyone pretends that this is something new when we all know it's not. But in this case, I was quite wrong. It's quite interesting. I'm just going to, give a brief overview of the program. As I said, there's a 4-week prelude and 12 weeks of the program. And I'll mention briefly, in the case of BC, there's actually an up to 1 year post program, which I'll touch upon later. So once you've signed up for it, what happens is you then get a requisition, via your email that you've set up with the program for lab work to be done. And so you go down to, in the case of BC, something called Life Labs, although there's other laboratories as well, and they do a whole raft of lab work, blood work, as well as urine test. And it's looking at your cholesterol, diabetes markers, inflammation markers. There is in some areas what's called a C-peptide test, which is done. In my case, because of where I was, our local lab actually doesn't do that C-peptide test for whatever reason. But when I spoke to the doctor, she said, don't worry about it. They can work around that. That's a whole other issue, which may not be an issue in your area. It seems to be just in one particular region that the lab doesn't do C-peptide test. So having had that, you get all this lab work done. You then have it's all done online. You then have assigned a doctor, a real doctor, that you have a pretty extensive meeting with, and you go over the lab work. You fill in, before you have the meeting, you do a bunch of online questionnaires, which takes quite a while to do. Like, it's got to be, if you're doing it honestly, it's probably like at least an hour to do of filling in your information, which all then gets plugged in and a profile created, which the doctor then reviews prior to your meeting with him. And so they look at a combination of like your lifestyle, the lab work, and then the one-on-one meeting that you have with him. or her. And then, in a sense, you prepare for the program. So as I mentioned, there's sort of like a 4-week prelude to the program. So why do they do that? So each of the 4 weeks has a bit of a theme. And I think it's to help you get your act together, so to speak. If you start a program day one, I'm not sure about you, but having started things like this before, you're not ready. There's a lot of fumbling around in the beginning. Do I get a gym membership? Do I buy whey protein powder? And so each of the 4 weeks sort of touches upon a theme. The first of the 4 weeks just sort of talks about the program in general, and talks about the labs which you've done and the significance of them. The next week deals with the issue of exercise. And in each of these weeks, there's assignments, and the assignments are viewing videos based upon the subject at hand, as well as readings that you do. And then also for the weeks, some question and answer sessions where you enter, again, information about yourself, about your exercise, if it's the exercise week, diet, if it's diet week. And then that all goes into building your profile as well. So then, as I said, the next week, the first week is dealing with the labs you've done. The second week is then dealing with the issue of exercise. And the theme is, if I can summarize it, is do better every day, if I can phrase it that way. In fact, that's one of the themes of it, is better, not perfect. So for the getting started guide, if you will, the 3 first themes are: 1, doing something every day. Number 2 is a 12-hour fast. And number 3 is 3 whole food meals. So I got a little ahead of myself there. So as I mentioned, the second of the week is the dealing with exercise, which in the beginning stages, do something every day. Walking is often the easiest for people. As the program develops, it actually ratchets up, and there's additional assignments, if you will, including adding resistance training. The next of the 3 weeks is dealing with diet, and again, there's questionnaires, there's video that you watch, and you download a Eat Better guide, a guide to food. And in that week, I'll mention the exercise week is also sort of an option where you can perhaps on your own, it's not part of the program, but if you have extended health, it would probably pay for it, is booking sessions with a physiotherapist, which is online, which for myself doesn't make sense. If I'm going to see a physiotherapist, it's physical. I'd like to see them in the physical, real world. But you can do that as part of that. The third week, as I mentioned, deals with diet. There's an eating guide that you download, questionnaires, and an option of having one-on-one online with a dietitian, which, again, if you have extended health, will pay at least a portion of that, depending on what your extended health coverage is like. The week after that, the week just before things kick off, if you will, is dealing with counseling, and the issue of counseling, as well as sleep. And again, there's a presentation that you watch and some readings to do, and then also an option of booking a counselor online to deal with stress resilience and sleep. And to be honest, I found that very interesting. I came across a study. Please don't ask for the citation right now. If I can, I'll look it up later and put it in down below. And there's a study done where they had people who needed to lose weight, and they compared one cohort, which was given a personal trainer, and the other cohort was given counseling sessions. And at the end of, I forget what the time frame was, the session with counselors lost more weight than those with personal trainers. The moral of the story is that often these sorts of things are in our head, not in our body. We all already know what we're supposed to do, we just don't do it. So that's the 4-week preparation which you have. And it's helpful because on the website there's also a community guide, and you can look at the content for the upcoming 12 weeks. You can't view the content for the upcoming 12 weeks. You can only view the week coming ahead. And I think part of that is to keep the cohort loyal, if you will. You're then, so you've done your lab work, you've had a meeting with a doctor, most likely, gone over your lab work, and you get a medical report focusing upon, insulin, a metabolic disorder, fatty liver, these sorts of things, which often, are lifestyle adjacent issues. And then you're assigned a cohort in which you meet once a week online, every week, for the 12 weeks. And in that meeting room, when you're in the online meeting, there's perhaps 16 to 18 people, perhaps, thereabouts, as well as a doctor and a dietitian in each of the sessions. And so that doctor who is leading that cohort most likely is not the same doctor that you had the one-on-one meeting with, because they're having to juggle so many files. But over the 12 weeks, that doctor does review your lab work, your questionnaires, gets to know where you're at. And in that 1 hour, and then you have a 1 hour session, as I said, once a week with all the same people, which I think is good, because often what people want is a positive feedback loop. And so if you're meeting the same people week after week after week, there's a certain amount of accountability. It becomes like, oh, well, I'm going to show up. And so you're more inclined to, I believe, stick with the program. Then my understanding then is you have another meeting with the first doctor you met, who you had the more extensive interview with, and you book that later. I've already booked mine about a month and a half into the program, because I thought, like, a month and a half in, I'm going to see what sort of changes are going on, what sort of, is there something that I should be doing different, what are my successes, and then at the end of the program, I believe you do more blood work, the same blood work that you had done before, and I believe another interview with a doctor, and then you have a before and after snapshot, so we can see what's transpired over the 12 weeks, and has it moved your markers? Has it really changed your cholesterol to fatty liver indicators, insulin levels, that sort of thing. What's a little bit unique to BC, which my understanding is Ontario and Alberta do not have as of yet, is even after the 12-week program where you meet weekly, there's actually in BC up to 1 year where you meet monthly. And that area where you meet monthly deals more with counseling rather than the physical parts. Because there is an online community, people will post like their successes and failures and encouragement and discouragement, if you will. But there's monthly check-ins for the BC people dealing with what I'd call CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy type issues. And that's one thing which actually I thought I would touch upon, and why I thought the program was so good. As I mentioned earlier, there's a study done showing that when you took a group of people with a personal trainer and those with a counselor, those with a counselor actually lost more weight. Similarly, the construction of this program, I'm just going to show it on my iPad, so it's going to be weird. Again, perhaps I'll do a screenshot and post it, or put it into the video later. We shall see. But the program for each of the 12 weeks, you see there's a green bar and a yellow bar. So essentially what it is for that week, the green bar is dealing with a physical issue. For example, the first week is called a teaspoon of sugar. And so what that refers to is that in your bloodstream at any one time, there's no more than a teaspoon of sugar in your bloodstream anymore, and insulin is going to have to come in and somehow figure out what to do with it, or push it into your fat cells or muscles, whatever. The yellow bar at the bottom is called a better mindset for that first week. And it's dealing with your mindset around the program. There's various themes. They'll have better, not perfect as a theme. Another slogan is better is always better. Consistent is better. And the reason why I bring that up is because throughout the entire 12-week program of the green bars and the yellow bars, the green bars are the physical, the yellow bars are what I would consider CBT light, or cognitive behavioral therapy light. And it's a way for people to deal with those emotional stress, sleep issues often, which sandbag them and are the cause of the dysregulation of their eating, of sort of like the sort of hedonic feedback loop we have around food, which sabotages us. Of those 12 weeks, the first 4 weeks are sort of the ramp up, and the theme for those first 4 weeks we'd call they call it the turning point. Weeks 5 to 8 is a nutritional deep dive. And finally, the weeks 9 through 12, they call it fine tuning. And as a result, I'll be honest, I find for an online program, it's far better and more detailed and precise than any other sort of online diet program I've seen that you would pay a lot of money for. The themes, if I could sort of summarize it, where I see the program going, is I think I mentioned how sort of like the minimal getting started guide is, for exercise, do something every day. And the theme is you'll build exercise with an emphasis on frequency and consistency. Don't worry about what you're doing so much. Just walk, or whatever it is you choose, and whatever you're capable of. If you can do more consistently, great, that's a head start. But the emphasis is just on getting in the habit of doing something every day. Again, the first beginning part is a 12-hour fast. So say, for example, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. is a very common window in which people would fast. And then the third component is 3 whole food meals. Now, all those aspects escalate throughout the program. So, and in the beginning, like you self-report. So, the something every day becomes something every day. Then it becomes like, there's somewhat of a emphasis on, if possible, if you're doing some cardio their preference is doing it in the morning, preferably outside, while you're fasted. So fasted cardio first thing in the morning, preferably outside, depending where you live, especially in Canada. That might not be as doable, but so doing something every day becomes fasted cardio in the morning. Eventually becomes fasted cardio, perhaps with daily movement thrown in to keep you moving using your Apple Watch, if you ever as reminders. Becomes adding resistance training as well. The 12-hour fast of 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., depending on your comfort and how much weight you want and need to lose, will escalate up to 16 and 8, meaning 16 hours of fast and 8 hours of a feeding window, which would then become 7 p.m. to 11 a.m. of fasting. They don't recommend in the program going past 16 and 8. I realize that there are other fasting modalities which have different time frames, 5 and 2 and OMAD, 1 meal a day, and not taking away any throwing any shade upon them. That's just not what this program is. They don't want people going past 16 and 8, and I believe the reason is because they want this to be an ongoing lifestyle adjustment, and so they're afraid of people boomeranging. You know, if you're like many of us, you rush into a program full guns. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and then slowly, entropically, it all sort of winds down. So the 12-hour fasting window becomes a 16 and 8 as time goes by, on a time frame which is comfortable for you. The 3 whole meals a day, there's a large emphasis on whole natural food stuffs, avoiding ultra processed foods, which I'll touch upon perhaps in the next video, talking about the week 1 seminar which I had. And the emphasis around food is the first order of the day when planning your meals is planning protein. For a lot of people, planning their protein is often the hardest part, and people are very often protein deprived. If you calculate your protein needs for the day, if you actually are getting your protein, then the other components of your day actually fall into place themselves. So there's that. As I say, it's an incredibly well-rounded program. You know, to recap, we often say that we would like to see, you know, preventative programs, but you know, why isn't the government doing this? Why is medicine always symptomatic, not, you know, proactive? This is actually, to be honest, everything that I thought it should be. The website which you go to, you know, besides the assignments that the weekly assignments that you have, and each week we'll have assignments of reading as well as video presentations to watch related around that theme, as well as questionnaires which you will do related around that theme, which again builds into your profile. And that profile, I just want to mention, changes over time, so you can see based on your questionnaires, my exercise habits were, you know, a 3.9 out of 10, and now after a few weeks I answer more questions about what I've been doing, and that 3.9 is now a 6.7, you know, and then that gives you the encouragement, well, if I just ratchet up a bit, I'm going to get to an 8, and or maybe like a, who knows, get to a 9 out of a 10, and 9 was an A in school, so I'm an A student then. And then that happens as well with food as well, I believe, although I'm not at that section yet. Within that website, as I mentioned, you have the readings, the video. There's a community section where people post online, and there's a, you know, board for where people post their successes. Then there's like a recipe section where dietitians, not everyone, just the dietitians, post recipes which they like and approve of based on the parameters of the program. There's a exercise guide which you can print out, which I want to say is actually very good. It has suggested, it deals primarily with resistance training, and it's very nicely graded and graduated. So there's exercise modalities for people with no equipment who are ill, who are near, maybe not bedridden, but near bedridden. They're very, very easy exercises. You know, what you can do for resistance training for that scenario, then resistance training people who are more ambulatory, for calisthenics, then people who are ambulatory with resistance bands, then with dumbbells, and then say for people who have access to a gym, graduate all the way up to programs for like 3 times a week, 4 times a week, 5 times a week. So, you know, if you're, you know, 60 years old dealing with arthritis and you know nothing about exercise, there's something you can plug yourself into. If you're more of a gym rat, well, if you're more of a gym rat, you probably have your thing going on already. But if you are of a hailer health and you're going back to the gym and you want to have a routine to plug into immediately, there'll be something there, and you can decide, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week, 5 times a week, split, whole body, split body, that sort of thing. So I've rattled on a bit longer than I thought I was going to about this, other than to say LifestyleRx. At this point in time, I would check it out. What I'm going to do is because this is sort of like my pre-assessment, because I'm just at the ending the 4 week of the preload, if you will. I'll come back for weekly updates with each week's seminar. What I will mention, which is a little bit something which is sort of on mine, where is it? Is if you are going to do this, as I mentioned, like counseling, a study of counseling versus personal trainer found that people in counseling had greater weight loss than those with a personal trainer. Is I would keep a journal, and the journal I would use is not. Sometimes it's called a fitness journal, because odds are, if you're using your phone, all your apps are on the phone as it is. If you have your Apple Health, and I'm using an app for tracking my food called Carb Manager. There's many other ones: My Fitness Plan, Lose It, Chronometer. I'm using Carb Manager because it has an emphasis on carbs. The graphics are nice. The graphics of My Fitness Plan, which I had once used, are kind of primitive by modern graphic standards. But then I would get what's called a guided journal, which again comes down to that sort of category that I call CPT Light. And you do check-ins, and it's dealing around goals, triggers for the day, points of tension and stress, win for the day, as well as parts of gratitude. And then there's various exercises about themes related to your life, reorganizing your life to learn more about yourself in sort of a more proactive way. There's many different kinds of guided journals. You don't need a graphic journal. You can just get a notebook, but I would say keep one. Please do keep one. If you're unsure which one to get, you can go onto Amazon and order 2 or 3 and just return the ones you don't like. In my case, I'm a guy who found that many of these guided journals were geared more towards women for some odd reason. I found a nice one with a lot of quotes from the Stoics. So, I can, pretend I'm in the movie Gladiator getting ready and have Marcus Aurelius giving me advice on the side. And I think that's actually a very good thing to do. If you're just using a notebook, and if you're unfamiliar with the notion of guided journals, I would say go on ChatGPT, and actually you can use ChatGPT to give you guidance. You can put in, present that you're a therapist giving me a guided journal or some such. You can Google those sorts of things and get advice for that online. But I would definitely say keeping a journal is a very good idea, as well as tracking your numbers. I'm going to be tracking my weight as well as my blood pressure throughout the 12 weeks to get an idea of where I'm going with that. And I will promise to try to keep you abreast of my future doings. Cheers.